and welcome to the Victim Slayer podcast. My aim here is to slay the victim mentality that is being encouraged in all of us. Playing the victim robs us of our power. Instead, let's together take on as much responsibility as we can bear, and then we'll find out just how strong we are. Let's go! Hello, fine people. How are we today? So, today's podcast is going to talk a little bit about, well, basically the question I want to ask is there an epidemic of mental illness? Some of you are just going to be screaming, fuck yeah, and some of you might question that a little bit, I don't know. To me, it seems obvious that it's a huge problem, and that mental illness is in fact more common than mental well-being. No, what's the word? Good mental health, I guess. So, what do you think about that? Do you agree? And what are the reasons that I think that there is an epidemic of mental health? Well, it seems that everywhere you look, people are miserable. A lot of people are miserable, and they may not look it in the fact that they have a smile on their face or that they say that they're happy, but there are common signs that they are not happy, common signs that I feel definitely show unhappiness. Like, for example, drug abuse, addiction to alcohol, cigarettes, social media, porn, gambling, the list goes on of... I mean, it's so common, actually, for people to be addicted to something. I mean, you could ask yourself that question. One, are you an addict? And again, this goes beyond drug addiction. It could be anything, It could be your phone, video games, it's really about that, the way that you interact with life. Is there always something that you kind of go into in an obsessive way to cope with life? I guess that's not a very good definition, but just think about that yourself, and then think about the people you know. How many people do you know that are balanced and not addicted to something specifically that's not good for them overall? Because again, a lot of these things are not bad in themselves, like video games or even social media, or things like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but it's the way that people use it, especially people who, for example, may have dreams that they've neglected and say things like they don't have enough time to pursue their dreams. Yet if you were to look at the stats on, let's use social media for an example, how many hours do they spend wasted on that? They definitely have time, and so that's sad that there's that disconnect between what they perceive as having no time, but it's actually just time that they use to numb themselves from maybe a job that they don't like. There's stats about, I think it's 70% roughly, maybe a bit more, of Americans who hate their work, their job, and nowadays people spend most of their time in work, so that figure is so sad to me, which means that 70% of people hate their life. That's what that says to me. I realise that your life is not just your job, but because of the amount of time that people spend in that, most people are working full time. I believe, I could be wrong about that. But let's at least take the people who are working full time. that really does taint your life if you hate your job, because most days when you wake up you're gonna feel that dread. I know that feeling. I hated working, and specific jobs were hellish, and they made my whole life hellish. And so I believe to a certain extent that that's what it's doing to these other people. And then you see why people are, even people that are like deemed as functioning adults, this is where the problem comes in, because we've got to a point where there's such a devastating amount of mental ill health that it's very normal and not seen as someone who's an addict for people to work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday and go out on the weekend, get bluttered, drunk, and come back 9 to 5, repeat, and they don't do anything. Their existence is on a loop with no meaning, and that's normal. Do you know what I mean? That's not someone that we would look at and say they're an addict. It seems now that the state that we're at with society and mental health, that you have to be shooting heroin into your veins. That's someone we would definitely consider an addict. Or you have to be drinking every single day, and it has to be bad, because even someone that drinks every single day, we might not consider an addict unless it was considerable amounts. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is that the line has been pushed so far because everyone is so mentally ill and everyone is so unfulfilled in their lives, and that's really sad. I don't know what you guys think about that. It's interesting to me, because I've felt this way for a while, and the more what would you say, the more I learn, maybe, the more I believe that to be true. And I suppose it's not even the more I learn, but the more time goes on, I believe that we're, in some ways we are heading in good directions, but looking at society as a whole, and people in Western culture and individuals' mental health, I believe we're going rapidly downhill. Our youth today, to me, seem very ill, and mental illness is just so common that we just accept it. And see, that's the problem. There's so many people that need help, like clinical level of help, and I believe I was in that category for much of my life, and I'm definitely far from being a finished product, because no one ever is. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm much healthier today, thank the Lord. I'm very blessed in that sense, but I felt most of my life that I was clinically insane, and it's not even felt like I was, and looking back I see how insane and ill I was, and there was no support for me because I wasn't ill enough, even though I was very, very ill. And that seems to be what's happening, is that there's not enough support for people because everyone's so ill, and then because everyone's so ill, it becomes normalised to be so ill, and then people are kind of living in that zone where if they're anything like me, they feel very ill, and they feel confused and overwhelmed, but then they look around and see that basically everyone's the same, and so it kind of reinforces the idea that, oh, it's not that bad, and it's this kind of weird mixture between not like it's not helpful for someone to be insane, but then society reflects that they're just normal, because that just confuses things further. It's like, oh, I kind of feel insane, but basically everyone's doing what I'm doing, so it must be okay, it must be normal. Well, it's not. The way most people live, pardon me, is not good. And the question I would ask is, why is that? what are we doing wrong? What are we missing in society today? Why is everyone so mentally ill? Like, what is happening? And my thoughts that come to answer that are really, we are missing we're missing a lot of things. So how do I get through this without my mind going blah and trying to say everything at once? So one thing I would say that we're missing, and that is very, very, very important, is our spiritual side of life. And this is just crazy. It's like such an important part of life. It's such an important part of who we are as human beings. We are more than just bodies on this earth to follow the orders of someone in a suit and then lay down our life having done nothing of meaning. Like, that's not why we're here. And the fact that we act in that is the way that we're here, because obviously I assume people see no way out. They're stuck in a job that they hate, and the only way to cope with that, when they see no conceivable way of getting out of that, of doing anything, they don't think it's possible to do something that they love, and so they just have to accept that this is the case. Excuse me. They pretend that it's okay, and they pretend that this is all that life is, and that life really is just about having fun while you're here in this hellish time, which is why we see so many of people of my generation and the younger generation in this nihilistic way of being, that nothing really matters and what the heck, let's just have fun. It's so destructive. Sorry, I'm just trying to drink my coffee there. And it's sad because we're clearly more than that. And when I've felt this way for a long time, and I've been very confused about this subject. But as a child, I always felt that what the fuck? I always felt, what the fuck? What is this life that I've been born into? And I'm sure there'll be people that feel that similarly, that like it didn't make sense to me that what is school? What I used to ask questions of what was here before the school. Like, I could clearly tell that a school was a man-made thing, you know, this big building block that we all get chucked into and told to sit down and told what to do, and it doesn't really seem like practical knowledge, and, you know, all these questions that I had and doubts that this was correct and that this was in a way real, like the real way to live. It didn't feel to me that it's the real way to live, to do the things that we were doing. And I also felt that there was, the more I got older, there was such a suppression on talks that I'm trying to open up, like, that would be deemed, in quote, deep, and that people really kind of shy away from that sort of conversation, and that always, I thought, okay, you know, people aren't interested in that, and it's so interesting to me. Why are we so surface level? Why do we talk about, oh, what did you do last night? Oh, I watched TV, blah blah blah. It's so fucking boring. Like, all we're talking about is nothing. We're talking about what you watched someone do on this made up show full of bullshit. Like, oh, and that's all we ever talk about. You know, you go into the workplace, or you go into school, or you go see your family. There's no depth into the conversation. There's nothing about what is the meaning of life. Is there a God? Why do we have these feelings? Like, there's no open doors into these sort of conversations, and that made me feel very isolated. And I'm sure if you're similar, you will have felt isolated, because it really doesn't feel like there was much of that conversation. And for me, as I was not raised religious, I didn't believe in God until very recently, and so there was, you know, I was never within a church where at least some of those kind of conversations would be talked about. So from an atheist perspective, it felt like there was nothing there. And the first time I really kind of found something that even grazed upon the surface of what I was after was when I was studying religious, moral and philosophical studies at school. And that's where we started to learn about Buddhism, and that was good for me because it was kind of talking about the things that I wanted to talk about without the supernatural side of things that I've obviously been how do you say it, not attracted to for various reasons. Personally, I'm quite critical, but also it seems there's a lot of societal reasons and things that have been pushed on the kind of backlash of religion that it's kind of laughed about these days. And, you know, I only had one friend growing up who was Christian, I believe. And, you know, most people are atheists, so it's kind of like in primary school you are joining in prayer because the school still kind of follows that regime, but by the time you get to high school, no teachers are really Christian, no one around you is Christian in this so-called Christian country, and religion's basically laughed about and put on the opposite side of science, and it's kind of said like, these two are at war, science has evidence, religion doesn't, so who the fuck's going to pick religion? That's kind of what it seemed like. And so anyone with a brain is going to choose science. So I feel that was kind of tricked in some ways by society, but the way that, I'm not saying really intentionally, but by the place that we're in societally, the kind of narrative of the day is science, not religion, and so that would obviously have had an influence over my non-interest in religion, I guess you could say. And so Buddhism for me was a good door to kind of open because it didn't have it does have a supernatural side, but when we were learning about it, we were basically more learning about the Buddha's teachings, and we learned that there was a supernatural, the people that believed in a more supernatural side, but we were just learning about the main principles of the middle way. And I may have said this before, but something that really stuck with me was the truth that the Buddha said that life is suffering, and that really I think all religions kind of will say something like that, but that's the first time I'd heard anything like that, and to me that was bliss to the ears that someone was actually talking about life as a whole idea and concept, for one, not just you go to school, you get a job, fucking like surface level rubbish. And then they were saying it's suffering. I was like, oh my god, thank you. Like, everyone just walks around what I felt like, and I definitely feel like now with, I believe, maybe more understanding, is that people walk around with masks on and are too frightened, maybe, to go beneath that and to reveal that actually we're not okay. Like I said before, as a coping mechanism, because they don't feel like there's any way out, and so it's easier to just pretend it's okay and that, no, I like my job, even though in truth most people hate it. That helps people cope with a hellish situation. Excuse me. So where was I? The coffee's thrown me off. That helps people cope with a hellish situation. Yeah, people wearing masks. And so just to hear that someone said life is suffering, that to me opened so much of my mind to thank you for fucking saying that, like, and not just walking around pretending everything's okay when it's clearly not. That was so obvious to me as a child, like, things are not okay. I don't know, that was very obvious to me, and it just becomes more obvious as time goes on and things get worse, really. And so yeah, I think we're missing that depth, and we don't know how to talk about it because it's not within our culture, because we've decided to take science instead of religion and leave and just mock religion completely, that there's really nothing good about it, is, I think, the common perspective. Ha ha, God, man in the sky, God, okay, you can do that if you want, that's fine. However, science does not fulfill humans. Science is excellent, and it's great that we have tools to learn about the world, and science is excellent for discovering truth in many ways. The research we have is wonderful, but we can learn so many things, not that we use it, which is a sad thing, because science is so tainted by humans. And that's one thing I find very sad as well, because like psychology, I love psychology, and I was drawn to it because I wanted to find out about myself and about other humans and what the fuck is wrong with us and what. I mean, there's so many questions. It's so interesting, the human mind. Wow, what an interesting topic. But we don't even publish or talk about interesting findings because it doesn't fit the narrative of today. And so science is great, but it's very, very limited by biased humans, and therefore it doesn't even do the job that it's very good at very well. Well, maybe that's unfair. It can. It's limited. It's limited, and it's very much limited in matters of the heart and the spirit. It does not answer these questions, and so by rejecting religion, which in many ways is absolutely fair enough, I understand why people feel like, oh, we were lied to and we were indoctrinated and all these things, and there's very much limitations with religion. It's not perfect at all, and so I get why you would want to come away from organised religion, especially if something personally's happened to you and it was bad, and you feel like the mask has been, or the blinds have been ripped off of your face and now you see. Of course you're going to want to disregard everything, but that's never good. The balance is always the hardest thing, and we struggle with it on an individual level, and we struggle with it as a culture and as a society because it's so hard to get the balance right, and we've definitely missed it with this one. We've gone into science as if that's the way, and religion was fucking awful. It's like, no, no, we've left so much behind that we need to be talking about what life means. We need to be talking about what is acceptable behaviour. We need to be talking about how to live good lives. We need to be talking about love and what happens after life. It doesn't mean we know, but why can't we talk about these things? Like, these things are not laughable, and the world is absolutely more than what we see in front of our eyes. It's not just a material world. We live in a living world where we are a part of nature, and the more that we disconnect ourselves from that, the worse things are going to get. That's maybe my answer to the question of why things are so bad. It's because we keep disconnecting ourselves from nature, from our own nature, from the nature of the planet, from the nature of the universe as a whole, that we have a soul that doesn't need to be religious, but the idea that there's something that is within us that is not just the body, the functioning body, that is limited in a sense. The soul is, I'm not sure of this, but it's at least more limitless. It is able to heal and transcend and love and be more, and it's hard to put into words. See, these conversations are so difficult because they, like David says all the time, that the words are so limited, and they really are. You really realise, and this is why it's interesting, because I've not believed in God for all my whole life until now. I really truly understand how much words are limited when I try to speak about things like this, because my belief is something that it was and has been an experience, and it seems to me that it's similar to when I've taken drugs before. Drugs like MDMA or ecstasy and LSD, these are the type of experiences that you can try and tell someone about, but it's never the same as when you experience it. And people might say, like, oh, if you take LSD you'll see things coming out of the walls, so then you picture that as like things coming out the walls, and then you have the experience, and it's, whoa, no, it's not like that. It's kind of indescribable. And so language is limited, and I feel that drugs actually were very similar to my experience of God. It's this thing that's outside of what we usually see and experience, and there's so much more. And that's what we're missing. We're just missing that connection. We're missing feeding our spirit, and this is why everyone's so kind of dead. We're walking around as zombies, junking ourselves up with whatever the hell we can find to make ourselves feel better, whether that's porn, drugs, television. It doesn't matter, whatever the thing is for that person, we are just going crazy for it, and we're taking it in all the time because we are so unfulfilled and non-full of love and connection to why we are here, that we are black holes needing continuous validation and fulfillment from material things like shopping. And yet people know this, because if you take drugs or shopping or TV, it never ends. You're never satisfied. You're always hungry, thirsty for more. And the problem is, like, for example, with drugs, then your tolerance goes up, and so you need more, and you're never fulfilled. And I think that's because we're missing, again, our connection with nature, our connection with God. When I say that, again, it doesn't necessarily mean a man in the sky. That's not how I picture it, although that's a fine way of picturing the idea, the concept of something that is above you, and therefore the idea we're trying to get here with God is, and that people for thousands and thousands of years have been trying to describe and to get across with God, is that a perfect being that is above you. So that's something that you can aim at, and you will always fall short of, because we are limited, imperfect beings. But that makes looking at God and striving to be like God means we can always improve, and we can always become more like God, because it's an never-ending journey to reach our potential, and our potential is God. It's godlike. And so that's why God is seen as a loving and judgmental father. Now, the father, that makes sense because of the judgment side of things, and this is actually where I feel, so nowadays people will say, won't they, they'll say, I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in God. Excuse me. And that seems like a more common way of being now, which, that's fine. What I think there's missing there, though, that religion does do well, is the rules. So if you meet someone who says, I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in God. What I believe has attracted them to that is the fact that they know something's missing, and they know that the thing that's missing is of spiritual nature. So they've gone towards something spiritual, but rejected the idea of God, because we've all kind of rejected the idea of God, because that's silly and it doesn't fit in with science, you know. So who in their right mind would contemplate such a silly idea of a man in the sky? So they've gone towards the spiritual side of things, which is great, because that's definitely what they're lacking, and so they've found the right thing. But what is missing from that is the rules. And I can see why I did the same, because, you know, we're free spirits, and we have the capacity to choose, and therefore we think, well, I know best, so I'm going to do whatever I want. And we're also very good as humans at thinking that we are moral and that we are good, and probably in a lot of cases the best, when in fact we're not. Can you even think of someone that you know that doesn't think they're great? I don't mean in a confidence way, but most people in their mind think, I have things right, because that's the way you survive. Obviously you think that my way of being and living is the best way. And most people think that they're morally good, that they don't lie, that they don't do bad things, and that they're moral. Yet, if you look around and you look at people, I'm sure you'd have a different opinion of people's behaviours. Like, we're very good at tricking ourselves, and that is a problem, because where does that leave us? If everyone's moral and good, then what the fuck's going wrong, you know? Obviously people are good at twisting, myself included, twisting their minds to think and to reason that their behaviour is good, because, oh, but that's because that person did this to me, and blah blah blah. And it's very subjective when you look at yourself, and you're very fragile, because you know truthfully, or if someone was to look at you from the outside who had an objective view that wasn't attached to protecting you from breaking, they would say, no, you've acted like a piece of shit in this way, this way, and this way, you did that wrong, blah blah blah. And so, holy shit, you know, we're not very good at judging ourselves. And so that's why it's good to have rules, to actually admit that, whoa, we're not very good at this thing called life, especially when you're born as a child who knows nothing, but you think you know something, and that will continue throughout your whole life. But you're learning, you're always learning, making mistakes, oh, but now I've got it, now things make sense. And we're so arrogant in that way, I guess, as humans, and it just continually trips us up. And that's okay. Like, that is okay. I don't mean this in a hating way towards us, but what we are very limited, and we are very weak, and we all have our own specific unique weaknesses, and so we trip up, and we're not very good at this, and we think when we're young that we understand things, and then we think when we're old that we understand things, and we never ever get the balance. We tend to go from one extreme to another, don't we? Everyone knows that if we look truthfully at people around us and ourselves, we all have extremes. Even if we understand that if we've come to the conclusion that balance is the key, pardon me, I've thought that for a while, and yet am I balanced? No. I'm extreme in many ways, but I try to get more balanced, more practice in living that out, not just knowing that that's as an abstract idea that makes sense, actually trying to put that into practice through my thoughts and actions. And that's hard, and we all need to do that as individuals and then as a society, for things to be balanced and for things to be okay and to flow and function. And I've kind of gone a bit off track there. What was I saying? Children, yeah. So because we're just learning and we don't know the way, that's why there's meant to be this connection between people who are old, who have lived life and have kind of come to grips with a way of living that is going to be good for you. And they're meant to pass down the knowledge to our youth that say, and it will be more strict, it will be like a set of rules, as in, don't drink too much alcohol, don't sleep around, like things that they have learned are correct because they've been here. And then the children are meant to come and challenge some of those ideas, and the mixture of the two are meant to create an evolving way of being that is as close to correct and as close to balance as possible. That's not happening, and I also believe that's also meant to happen with, the family relationship between mother, father and child. Excellent. And then I also believe that's what's meant to happen between the marriage, and that men are meant to be more fixed in their ideas, more orderly and with rules, and strict, judgmental, these sort of things, and protective. And the woman, again, more childlike, is meant to be more kind of free, open, and of a feeling nature, understanding, and the two together create the perfect balance of not being too much feeling and openness that you never do anything and nothing makes sense and you don't action anything, but not being too orderly and rule following that things become stagnant and that they don't make sense for the next generation. Like I believe that's why the balance exists between man and woman, and the older generation and the younger generation. It's all meant to create this balance of life, which is so beautiful. Like, I find that so beautiful. And every time I think about that, I don't know, it just gives me like such a nice feeling. I think, oh, that's so cool, like that's the way things are meant to work. And obviously, okay, you'll get couples, for example, that are maybe the woman's a bit more manly in ways, and the man's a bit more womanly, wasn't like feminine or masculine in ways, but the balance still works, that together they become a balance of the two ways. And so that's just beautiful, and that's how it's meant to work. But because we've lost these connections, I mean, think about the way families interact. People don't sit down and have meals. And now, if you're listening to this and you do, and you don't have a television, and you have a dining room, and over food at night, every single night you come in and you all talk about how your day was, and you have that connection, excellent. I'm so happy to hear that, but that's not the common mode in the West. And even if that is the case, but then the rest of your lives are still in separate rooms, on phones, laptops, separate lives, we're still very far from the connection that we are, I believe, meant to have, that gives us fulfillment and purpose. And that's not even going into fulfillment of purpose in what we do in our work. I mean, that is so off. But for now, I'll stick to like family relations, and then wider society, which obviously comes off of that. But we don't speak, or if we do, it's, how was work? Oh, it was shit. Oh, I'm tired. I mean, I've spoken about some of these things before, but it's terrible. It's actually, we are at breaking point. I keep thinking, surely things are just gonna explode soon, because things are so broken. Children are being raised by phones, iPads, televisions, and they're also not even being raised by phones, iPads and televisions that the channels are chosen by the parents, because there's nothing wrong with the internet's fabulous, that we can be connected to things. For example, David and I have spoken about the potential for schools to actually not be fucking hell zones, which we both believe they are. I don't know if that's come up in the way I've spoken before, but yes, I definitely believe that schools are fucking horrible and they are to brainwash children. I'm not saying teachers know about that. I think most teachers think they're educating, etc., etc. But the end result is the narrative of the day is pushed and pushed and pushed into our young children's brains that absorb, and then they go on to live lives where these lies have been forced into their heads and everyone's confused and no one makes any sense as an adult. Slightly off topic. Let me get back. Schools. Alright, yes, so the idea that in the internet, so basically the problem with schools is they're like, to be a good teacher is a very difficult job, isn't it? You probably all remember maybe one good teacher, and then the rest were fucking doughballs or terrible. Like, that was my experience, and so it's because a teacher's a hard job. It's a very hard job, and it's a very important job. But now that we have something like the internet, we could actually use that to teach children by having less teachers. Like, we did. The internet means we don't need to have a teacher for every 30 pupils. That's a great thing. That's so great, because the teachers that we have for every 30 pupils are terrible, and there's going to be some groups of 30 kids that have just been blessed by the gods, and then the rest of them are just, holy shit, how did this person get into the job? Do you know what I mean? Because people, how do you say it? Not everyone's made for that job, okay? And my example here is Bob Ross. I hope you have heard of Bob Ross. If not, look him up. He paints wonderful art pieces and kind of teaches it. And I actually didn't know about Bob Ross until David showed me him, which was... It was after I was actually in art school, which is just laughable that I didn't know of him. He's like so cool. And I have always said that if I just watched his videos while I was in art at school, I would have learned way more than the years that I wasted getting told, you fucking draw this or you're bad. Like, the opposite of art. Whereas he teaches there are no mistakes, only happy accidents, and he has a beautiful way of conveying what art is to people, and to people that would say, oh, I can't do art, I'm not artistic. No, he says, yes, you can. You just pick it up and be free and enjoy the process, and that's beautiful. What a beautiful way of teaching that. And what we could do is exactly what I've suggested, and have thousands of people hooked up to him as a teacher, or other people who are teachers that are great, that we actually think they're great at that subject. Why not hook everyone up to that? I mean, it's possible in the future, maybe going that way, and that would be excellent, and taking them out of these classrooms getting taught by people who should not be teaching, who are not role models, because we have to remember that teaching is not only the subject that they teach, they are a role model to a child who is how do I say this? Is influential? No. Like, at that age, they can be easily influenced. So, we need to take that into account. And so, important job for teachers, okay? So, what was that even talking about there? What was that? How was that linked to the epidemic? So, schools and stuff. Teaching. Important job. Yeah, I mean, so that is a way out. I can't really remember, but that is a way out of making things better and getting away from, yes, exactly, the narrative of today. Oh no, what was I speaking about? So the narrative of the day, school's been shit. You know, schools always just throws me off but you know, what do you think about that idea? Would that be a good thing? I think it would. And you might think, oh, but what about the teachers losing their jobs? Tough luck, to be honest, because you shouldn't be in that job. We definitely have this idea that we must serve in unrealistic ways everyone. and it's such a problem, actually, that we must let everyone suffer because of the person at the bottom of the pile. And that is just bonkers, and it's not in line with nature. If we are to evolve and to create a better world, we must do what's good for the people. You know, me and David were watching this bloody depressing show of like Neighbours from Hell or something like this, you know. I don't know what it was called, but something like that. And it's sad to watch. You can only watch a few before you need a long break from the reality of what is going on. Yeah, this one was in Britain, and it'll be in... It's definitely bad in Britain anyway, I can say that for sure. That you'll have a neighbour that's a piece of shit. Like, for example, there's oh god, I just have to laugh because it's so tragic. There's this guy who is basically antagonising this old couple, and one night he comes up and is banging on the window, and this is caught on CCTV, so the woman goes out to tell him to go away or whatever, what are you doing? And on the CCTV you don't quite see it, but you see her getting pushed over and she hits her head off of the ground by this guy who's 40 or something, who's an ex what do you call it, boxing coach. And it's disgusting. And so we'd already watched a few of the shows, and you know, I understand how flawed the justice system is, and it's something that is terrible. So I didn't have high expectations, but I thought at least with this one, because an old woman had just been attacked by a younger guy, I thought maybe this time they'll actually do something. I'm not saying, I don't know what, but they'll maybe do something. And it's on CCTV pretty much. No. Nothing. I can't even remember what happened, but nothing happened. Not arrested. I think it was, a 6-month don't go near them order. Because he's the type of person that follows the social rules of don't push an old woman. She actually, anyway, I'm gonna pause there before I go too much into Rantville. But in all of these shows, the piece of shit person that is doing things that we would all agree, unless you're insane, that are not acceptable. Like, not acceptable. There's other ones that a woman threw tea over this woman. Again, a lot of this is caught on CCTV, because when they first go to the police, nothing happens. Get evidence. They get evidence and then nothing happens. Or they get something like 4 hours community service, and then you're back there. And the rest of society, who are people that are working hard and doing well, and at least not burning people and hitting old women to the ground, have to put up with it. Now, why are things so backwards? We have got things so wrong. Because we're protecting the person at the bottom, the person that is shit for everyone. And I'm not saying you can't have compassion for that person, but something needs to be done. You can say, oh my god, it's a shame that they feel that behaviour is acceptable. Yeah, sure, of course you can. But the real shame is that the rest of society has to genuinely suffer because our justice system does not reflect what the people want in any way. It's gone so skew-whiff in this country, and I believe in most Western places. It's bonkers, because the people we have in are there because of money reasons. It's nothing to do with what the people want. If the people in that community voted for the one neighbour that everyone thinks is an arsehole that terrorises everyone. I mean, there was also one where a dog bit a woman's face and she's now has to drink through a straw for the rest of her life. They actually did get 1 year in prison. That's probably the harshest sentence of all of them. You know, what is going on? It's just, it's backwards. And to try and remain on topic, it's because, again, one of the biggest things that I think is really important that I've not touched on yet is actually the size of our communities are wrong. And I believe this firmly, that there may be ways to do it without this, but it basically seems to me that you need small communities. And you need small communities so that people feel a part of the community. Now, the need to feel a part of a community has not left human beings. Just because we now live in huge cities and huge countries and now things are globalised, so we basically live as one world. I mean, in this country, in the UK, you hear maybe more things about American politics than we do our own. I mean, ooh, at all of it. I don't give a fuck, but we live in a globalised country, in a place, you know, we it's not just about our country anymore, and that's why countries all look the same. There's no really point in travelling to any Western place because it's all the same. It's all the same 4 shops. There's nothing different about anywhere anymore. And anyway, so the fact that we have that is not good because we still need to feel a part of something. We still need to feel important, and you don't get that when you're one of 8 billion people. You know, you just don't get that. So if we could bring things back to smaller communities where a community decides how it's going to live, that would be great, because then if you get people that want to live a bit more on the whatever side of things, they can do that in one community. If somewhere wants to live a bit more on the other side of things, they can do that in their community. There shouldn't be this overarching state ruling over everything, even though the people don't want to live that way. It's bonkers. And if we could make these small communities, then people actually feel that their one is community, that there's support, and also they'll feel that they want to feed back into it because they can see where they fit into that community, where the community supports them, and they want to pay back. And that would make things a lot better, and it would make things a lot better if I'm getting a wee bit all over the place here, but if families were connected and communities were connected, that's something that I believe would help this epidemic of mental health. How do we do these things from here? I have to agree with my way of seeing things, which is through a psychological sort of perspective, that it happens on an individual level, and I think that trying to change things in a huge worldly way is difficult, and gets it can go in the wrong direction. I don't know if it's impossible, but it seems that the thing that we definitely all have the power to do is change our own lives for the better. And so that comes down to your mindset and back to not playing the victim, taking responsibility for your life and trying to sort your own mental health. And that, of course, comes from telling the truth. Like I said, take responsibility, stop blaming other people, stop blaming society, stop blaming everything. And it might be that, yes, there's been problems with society, of course there has, but the more responsibility you take, the more power you have. But the thing is, you're robbing yourself. We are robbing ourselves if we say, oh, well, society did this to me, and society did that to me, and my parents did this to me, and that may all be true, but it's not useful. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not useful for you, and you will not move from where you are in any positive direction. Pardon me, if you keep telling yourself that story. You need to take as much responsibility as you can bear, and then you will find that you can do way more. You know, we are not as stuck as we tell ourselves. We have so much power if we would only believe it. This is the thing, and this is what you can gain from having a connection with God or something higher or yourself or spirit, is if you look inward but also look up. It doesn't need to be God in the way that you might be thinking I'm talking about God, but it needs to be something like a perfect being, and say, how can I be more like that? But the balance is to not only look at that so that crushes you and makes you feel like you... Because obviously you're gonna... If you compare yourself to perfection all the time, it will crush you because you'll think, I'm so imperfect, I'm such a failure, blah blah blah. It's not good, and I have struggled with that. As I actually think that's been a huge problem for me as a perfectionist. Let me know what you think about that if you're a perfectionist. And it kind of disables you, and that's no good either. So you need to look up at God and say, how can I be more like God every day? Every day is a new day. You know, we have these cycles of light and dark in each day, which is just so beautiful to think that every day the sun comes up and it's a chance for a fresh start, and that is true. It doesn't matter what's happened. I mean, things have happened, but you can change your life with each new day. You can take a deep breath and look up to God and say, how can I be more like you? How can I be more like a perfect being? What steps do I need to take to today not tell a lie? Today to clean up what I have done in the past. Today to be more loving towards my family or my neighbours or my friends. Today to let some anger go. Today to forgive. I'm going to actually do a podcast about forgiveness. But then at the same time, by looking up every day and comparing yourself to God and seeing where you can take the next step to be closer to God, you also need to look back and say, wow, I used to get angry at something like that, but now I don't. That's really good progress. Well done. And it is, again, that constant balance between, God, you're so far away from perfect, get a move on it, getting better, but also look how far you've come. You used to be an absolute bellend, and now you're less of a bellend. Well done. That's such a thing to celebrate. And so it definitely seems to be that balance so that you can continue going up and getting better and not be paralysed by the thought of how much of a failure you are, because we're all failures. And that's just life. We need to accept that we are not perfect and that perfection is useful but also dangerous. And I wonder if that's a good message for people suffering from eating disorders and stuff like that. There's obviously this ideal there must be a link there between perfectionism. I don't know of that, but I've struggled with kind of eating disorders. Never been terrible, but body image things, and there's definitely, I think that's related to this perfectionism thing as well as other reasons. But yeah, having that balance between really truly looking at yourself, what you used to be, and that's something we don't do, because this is what I was speaking to my friend about actually. What I have been doing recently when doing my fitness journey, I was taking videos of myself to look at the progress, and it was maybe I've not even done that many, but let's say it would be like every 3 months or something like that. And I genuinely each time thought I was get anxious to be like, oh, I've not even made any progress, this is so shit, like I feel really bad. That's so embarrassing, but anyway. Or maybe there's a bit of progress but it's not what it should be in this space of time, blah blah blah. Take the video, compare it to the last one, and I'm like, holy shit. I am a lot less fat and I've gained more muscle. But I genuinely didn't believe that, because I've been seeing myself every day, and people say that and you go, yeah, you don't really notice. You actually don't. You actually think, I've not done enough. Bonkers. And then you see the objective evidence of the video from 3 months ago to today, and you go, wow, well done, Michelle, you've actually done good. You could have done better, yes, and maybe blah blah blah, but look, girl, you done good, okay? And when I was speaking to my dear friend about this, we were talking about, I was saying, it'd be good if we had something like that for mental health, because I was telling her how much better she'd done, even though she was maybe in a place of beating herself up about a setback, even though setbacks are to be expected and normal and absolutely fine. And it's just about changing that perspective. Well, look how much better you are than you were a year ago. And she really is so much better. But again, there's no objective markers in that. And I was saying maybe there would be a good thing to try and mark down how your mental health has progressed, like something like my video but for mental health. So if you've got any ideas about what that could be, that'd be interesting. Because I mean, I think there's many ways. Like art would probably be a cool way, writing, even taking videos about your thoughts. But you can definitely do it. This isn't as objective, but for example, I like to just sometimes I will, when I try and reverse that perspective and think about, okay, what did you used to be like? And I actually did this the other day and I thought, holy shit, I was a nutcase. And, you know, just think about some of the ways I would act, and it's like I don't actually even feel, it's not like I'm, because obviously on the journey when you're trying to change your behaviour and the way you think and feel, at first you have to do that without feeling it. So if you would get angry at something, you feel angry, but you're not going to like blurt out angry words, for example. That would be like a first step, wouldn't it? But you feel angry still. But it's like now I don't even feel the ways I felt then when I was confused and mentally ill and terrible and broken. And there's still many ways that I'm broken and in needing of healing, and so I'm not saying that, but compared to what I was, and when I think back on some of the things, even like this one always makes me laugh, like just be angry all the time, like this is so embarrassing, but like when I was hanging up washing, like if a sock fell off, oh, fuck's sake, I was just horrible, really, and that just makes me laugh now, even though it's like that was me, and ooh, it's like it's nice to just think, oh, thank God that you've blessed me to be able to improve, and that is no longer the case for me, and I don't feel that angry and hateful towards socks that fall due to gravity, you know. That's what a blessing. So I think I'll leave that there, because that's kind of on a little high note, isn't it? And I hope this has been an interesting podcast. And again, it's all about balance. It's all about making good no, it's not about making good excuses, right? Making good choices, not bad excuses. That's what it's all about. Once again, I've been a bit all over the place, but you're probably getting used to that by now, so it's okay. Actually, I want to just leave it on this. So when I was talking to my friend, we're talking about affirmations and how that's kind of a popular thing these days. And I was saying, what one of the things I've been thinking recently is that I have, like, again, because I'm telling you that I've recently found God and that I've now surrendered my life to Him, I'm viewing things differently, in that the things that I'm good at are gifts from Him, and they really truly are. They're, you know, they're not my doing, my talents, and in the same way my weaknesses are not my doing. It's just nature, and that's not to take away my responsibility, but it's also to understand that there's something bigger than me, and that I serve something bigger than me. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but anyway, it's to not take credit for and be arrogant, basically, about the things that come naturally to me, because I have struggled with that, being arrogant about people not understanding things that come so simply to me, and thinking, oh, fucking idiots. It's like, well, okay, that comes naturally to you, that's not anything to do with you, that you understand that, and they don't, just like I don't understand maths, you know. So trying to view it a bit more like that. And so the affirmation, if you could call it that I wrote down, that my friend actually came up with a better way of saying it than me. So it says, I have gifts that God wants me to use so I can grow, learn and love. So I've got that written down now, which I thought was really nice. And that's what I feel we all have. We need to realise that we have God-given gifts, that we are on this, this is what life is about, that we are here to serve and to use those gifts in a way that helps other people, which will give us fulfillment. And that's kind of, even though I said I was going to stop this, I'll just quickly mention that that's kind of what I mean about what a great sort of revolution would be in our world, where for things to get better would be that people don't hate their jobs, and that we can truly know that we are all unique, and through that uniqueness we should not strive to be anyone else but our true selves, and to look inward and see what did God give us, what are our talents, and also what are they, why was I given these talents, what's the purpose. And with all of them, it's to serve others. So you might have a unique weakness or strength, or both, that will help other people understand their situation, and it will help them. And so that's what that's all about, and I want that to be what you look into your life. And if you are really struggling, and if you are struggling specifically with your job and feeling unfulfilled, don't give up. Don't believe the idea that you have to work 9 to 5 and that it's normal to it is normal to be miserable, but like, don't end there. Don't give up. There is hope, and if you can reconnect with the gift that God has given you and ask him, you don't have to believe, but ask yourself if that's more the way you think about it. Meditate, pray, and ask yourself, what is it that I'm good at? What is it that I love doing? And how can that serve myself and others? Okay. Awesome. Remember not to be a victim. Take on responsibility. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. Please support. I love that you guys are watching, the very few of you. It makes me very happy. And thanks for all your support. Goodbye.